When I dive into water, I feel free. Free from noise, crowds, billboards, concerns, gravity. In water, I surrender and just go with the flow. In these moments, nothing else matters. I'm at ease, curious, and in awe at how deeply connected I am to the natural world. When I am in water, I am in my blue mind. Let's activate our blue minds by going back and remembering our most memorable experience with water. Go ahead and close your eyes. As you think back to that experience, think about what the day was like, who you were with, what you were doing, and just immerse yourself in that water for just a moment. Now open your eyes. I bet many of you have a similar feeling like I had with my experience with water. You maybe felt a sense of calmness, you may have felt relaxed, at ease, happy, playful, you may remember laughing, or maybe even the thought of water actually brings up a little anxiety from within you. But no matter what, when we think about water, we always feel something. I too have a water story, and this is how my water story begins. My first memory with water starts before I could even remember, when I was 6 months old. I was born in the Andes Mountains of Colombia, in Bogota, and where we were living, we didn't have a bathtub, and so my parents used to bathe me in a 5-gallon bucket in the shower. There was a day when I was in the bucket and my mom had turned around to grab a towel. She asked me to hold on tight to the sides of the bucket, and when she turned back around, much to her horror, I was underwater. At 6 months old, my mom thought that she had instantly drowned me and how terrible of a mother she must have been. But in that split second later, I ended up popping out of the water and laughing, and I was so smiley. And that was my first experience with water. That was my first dunk underwater. By the time I was 3 years old, I was heading off to go get swimming lessons. I was really nervous about the swim classes, but I ended up being not only the youngest kid in the class and the littlest one in the class, but by the end of the swimming lesson, I was the only one to swim the entire length of the pool all by myself. And I remember hopping out of the water and feeling so proud because I had done this huge accomplishment of swimming such a big pool. It was 25 yards. But swimming the length of the pool, I felt overjoyed that I had gotten a chance to do that, and it felt so good. And then I remember feeling really excited about the medal I had won for my accomplishments. That was when I knew I was going to be a swimmer. When I was 8 years old, I discovered reruns of The Undersea World of Jacques Cousteau. I had no idea that you could have a career that would allow you to be in water all day long and study animals and protect those animals and the ocean. Immediately, I was hooked, and that was when I knew that I was going to be a marine biologist. Now, fast forward 25 years, and I find myself on Fort Lauderdale beach with a Master's of Science degree in one hand, hundreds of scuba dives under my belt, thousands of words written in scientific publications and reports and reviews about coral reefs and coral restoration. And yet there I am on Fort Lauderdale beach, and I looked around and not a single local or tourist knew that right in front of us, within swimming distance from shore, was the only barrier reef in the continental United States. That was when I knew I would dedicate the rest of my career to reconnecting people to water in order to inspire new ways of feeling towards water and acting on behalf of our blue, watery planet. So how many of you have been to space? Anyone? Well, from space, this is what our planet looks like. We look like a blue marble in the inky vastness of the universe. You see, there's really good reason why we're so drawn to water. When NASA is looking for life on other planets, they follow the water, and for good reason. Life begins because of water. Take a deep breath. Now take a second deep breath. You can thank oceanic plankton for that second breath. Oceanic plankton provides 50% of the air that we breathe. Water provides us with food. Water-based proteins feed 1 billion people on our planet. The ocean and waterways support the livelihoods of 500 million people on our planet. And in fact, 2/3 of our global economy is based off of some kind of activity that has to deal with water. Clean water is part of our everyday lives. In the US, every one of us uses between 80 to 100 gallons of water just for our basic needs. And because of our reliance on water, it's estimated that 80% of the global population lives within 60 miles of an ocean, lake, or river. This innate relationship with water goes much deeper than economics, food, or proximity. Our ancient ancestors evolved first swimming, then crawling, and then walking. We still see the remnants of our past life in water as we develop in our mother's womb. For the first few months of our lives, we survive in a protective aqueous environment where we're fed oxygen through our mother's umbilical cord, much like how a scuba diver receives oxygen from their regulator hose. Scientists believe that in the first 8 weeks, babies begin to develop their senses, and by 26 weeks, they've developed all 5 of their senses: taste, touch, smell, sight, and hearing. It's only once we're born our senses become influenced by the world around us, and then so too does our memory and cognition. As we age and we lose or we have weakening of one sense, we also see that we have a weakening in another sense. And so Alzheimer's patients oftentimes lose their appetite because they can't see their food as well, and so it makes them less hungry. Nature, it turns out, and in particular blue space, is an environment that helps to stimulate our senses and allows us to hold on to and engage with those senses. Nature and blue spaces are what bring our senses to life. What's most fascinating is that our bodies, our brains, our heart, and our lungs are about 70% water, just as our planet is 70% water. As science writer Lauren Isley once wrote, "Human beings are but a way that water has of going beyond the reach of the rivers." Our connection to water runs deep. But in recent times, we've drifted away from water. We walk on sidewalks and asphalt, we drive on roads in our man-made vehicles, and we spend countless hours indoors under artificial air conditioning. The food we eat is processed and tastes nothing like nature intended it to. We use soaps, perfumes, and household chemicals that smell like nature but don't really smell like nature. And we touch surfaces and materials that are not even found in the natural environment. Our modern lifestyle has separated us from the very senses that we were built over thousands of years to perceive, and that is the richness of nature. It's become such an issue in younger generations that a new disease has been diagnosed: nature deficit disorder. Kids, it turns out, are disconnected from the natural world, and it's hurting them. In these times of disconnect, we've unknowingly developed a red mind of stress, and it's killing us. That same fight or flight stress response that we evolved to have when we were being chased by saber-toothed tigers is now being activated when we get the medical bill in the mail. Demands on our attention, constant calls to action, and information overload is causing a situation that's heightening our levels of stress and thereby producing chronic stress. So this is actually something that we see quite often in those who suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. Studies have even shown that stress experienced over 21 days can lead to the same chronic stress as those who do suffer from PTSD. And they can also then contribute to the worsening of effects such as anxiety, depression, autoimmune diseases, and even over-reliance on drugs and alcohol. In fact, according to the World Health Organization, autoimmune diseases are expected to rise by 57% within the next couple of years. As a result, we're overly relying on pharmaceuticals in order to manage our stress and our pain. What if time spent in and around water was as effective and more immediate than an antidepressant? What if we could treat autism, addiction, post-traumatic stress disorder, and other ills with fishing, swimming, or a long walk on the beach? In a new field of science that looks at what happens when our most complex organ, the brain, meets the planet's largest feature, water, we're finding that there's physiological and chemical changes that happen when we're near water. Water can help us transition from the red mind of stress or the gray mind of depression into the blue mind of calm centeredness. Now, in your own lives, consider where you may have had some of your aha moments. I bet you're right, it's the shower. So in the shower, it's one of the few times in our days that we actually get a chance to disconnect from technology and from our electronic devices. Also, hearing the sound of water and feeling the water drift over our head allows our brain to slip into this drift mode. And it's in this drift mode that we stimulate a higher quality of thinking. We also end up working smarter rather than harder. Also, we end up becoming much more introspective and present when we're in the shower and when we're in this drift mode. And it's in this flow state that we actually get to experience a deep sense of connectedness. And it's in those moments that we help to pull out our inner genius. So the next time that you're in the shower, consider actually being in the shower rather than thinking ahead of those meetings you may have to attend or that assignment you need to finish up. Instead of thinking about all the things you need to do in the day, focus on being in the shower, using all of your senses, and taking advantage of that moment to yourself. I promise you, you might just find your next aha moment right there at home in your shower. Now, what is it about water that brings us to this heightened sense of awareness? Well, it does all come down to our senses. The very sight of water puts us in a calm state. You see, water, especially when it's changing, as in the surface of the ocean, holds us in a soft trance while still keeping our brains activated. A lot of this stems back to ancient times when we were evolved to feel at ease if we could see danger coming. And the vast expanse of an ocean allows us to do just that, to see danger coming. And so we can be easily put at ease. Another quality of water is, of course, the color. Blue is one of the most popular colors in the world. And it also turns out that Crayola Crayon just a few years ago came up with their new Crayola Crayon color. It happened to be Bluetiful. Even this year, Pantone's color of the year is True Blue. So there really is something to the color blue. And oftentimes that color is associated with trust, with confidence, and with calm. It's the reason why we see the color blue in hospitals across the world. I think it's fair to say that the sound of water is the sound of tranquility. You know, water is omnipresent on so many peaceful soundtracks, whether it be the sound of rain, the sound of waves crashing at the beach, or even the sound of a stream trickling by. Water is associated with that sense of calm. You know, the other thing that the sound of water does is that it's a rhythmic sound. That lapping of waves onto the shoreline produces this rhythmic sounds that immediately puts us at ease and even creates a moment of privacy. If you think about it, if you're walking down the beach with a loved one, you may not have noticed, but it turns out that we subconsciously realize that when we're by water, the sound of water actually drowns out our conversation. And so it's as though we're enveloped in a bubble of privacy when we're by water, whether it be an ocean or a fountain. Next time you want to have an intimate conversation with somebody, take them down to the water, take them over to a river, or even by a fountain in your town. Having that moment of privacy really helps to bring us together. You open up and you have more deeper conversations, bringing us even closer together. And who doesn't want more of that? There's actually a lot to sea breeze or even a sea spray that comes off of a waterfall. Those tiny little droplets actually have negative ions that, when they reach our system, help to produce positive vibes. By that, I mean there's actually proof that's showing that our brains produce biochemical reactions that help to release serotonin when we're exposed to these negative ions in water droplets. And that serotonin helps to alleviate depression, anxiety, and even boost our daytime energy. So if you're ever on a boat, soak in all of that wonderful sea breeze, really breathe in all of those extra negative ions so that you get some positive vibes. The feeling of water is unlike anything else on earth. It really is the only time you can ever actually feel weightless while on this planet. And to me, it's one of the best feelings that there is. For any of you scuba divers out there, you know exactly what I mean when I talk about this weightless feeling. And even if you simply float in water, there's so much health benefits to just the act of floating. I mean, think about it. It really is the only time that you get to have some relief from the gravity of our planet. And just sitting in your seat alone, it takes thousands of muscles and tendons and little tiny movements in order to keep you upright. It actually causes a little bit of stress on your body, but when you're in water and you get the chance to float, you finally get to feel relief from the sense of gravity. That is the benefit of the touch of water. And finally, one of the most important aspects of water is that it helps us feel small. When we're by water, we are promoting this feeling of awe and wonder, and it helps to contribute to giving us a greater sense of purpose and meaning, which, by the way, can add 7 to 9 years onto your life. Water gives us a chance to escape our modern lifestyles for a rare moment of solitude where we can truly be with ourselves, within ourselves, and within the grandeur of this immense planet. Awe, it turns out, is one of the most significant feelings that has escaped us in these modern lifestyle. The best way to describe this mildly meditative states that we slip into when we're in, on, under, or near water is called blue mind. And it's coined blue mind by author and marine biologist Dr. Wallace J. Nichols, when he teamed up with neuroscientists to study the effects of water on our minds. That's when he made this profound discovery that it turns out that water adds so much more value to our lives than we have been giving it credit for. No matter if you're kayaking in the mangroves or surfing Point Break, swimming in a pool, or walking along the coastline, water, whether spending time in, on, under, or near it, really does help to promote creativity, happiness, fun, fitness, and ultimately fulfillment. Water, we're finding, provides the most profound shortcut to less stress and more happiness. Right now, we're playing witness to the ills of the planet, and Mother Earth is letting us know that if we want to survive, we need to change our ways. When the planet heals, we heal. So why not care for the very elements that not only drives life on this planet, but also makes us feel so good? Water. Now, to help you out, here are 7 ways you can lessen your impact on the ocean. Adopt a plant-rich diet. Notice here I don't say plant-based diet. I know it's not easy to go vegetarian, let alone vegan, but if you simply adopt the mentality of a meatless Monday, then you can actually have a pretty significant impact on the environment. You see, it turns out that livestock production produces more methane greenhouse gases every year than every car, ship, train, and plane combined. And this is according to the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. An interesting study has actually recently come out that is showing that we can also reduce the amount of methane production from dairy cattle by 95% simply by adding kelp a seaweed into their diet. And it doesn't even take much. Just switching over to 5% of kelp in the diet is shown to have significant decreases in their methane belches and farts. So just as it's good for cows, kelp and seaweed and other plant-based foods are good for us too. So adopt a plant-rich diet. Buy carbon offsets. When you're buying carbon offsets, you're actually investing in organizations that are involved in reforestation programs or in other kind of innovative technologies that help to remove carbon dioxide and methane from the atmosphere. The Ocean Foundation's Seagrass Grow program is an example of one of these carbon offset programs. And when you donate to them, you're helping them restore seagrass beds, mangrove forests, and salt marshes in coastal areas, and helping to then absorb the CO2 from the water. So consider that. Buy carbon offsets. Another thing you can do is contract for green energy. Every year that you look to upgrade your home, consider upgrading it with a green solution. You know, solar and wind power have actually dropped 80% since 2011, making it much more affordable these days. And so when you are thinking about those new renovations, consider an herb kitchen garden. Consider solar powered roof or even a solar powered charger for your devices. Then, of course, you can always elevate your green quotient in lots of other ways simply by doing a search for green energy alternatives. So consider that. Contract for green energy. Here's a solution that will speak to your gut. Don't waste food. Did you know that 40% of our food goes into landfills every year? And in the landfills, it's not actually being composted. Instead, as that food waste starts to rot, it actually releases methane gas. And methane is one of these greenhouse gases that's 30 times more potent and more harmful to our atmosphere than carbon dioxide. So a good way around that is to actually look for recipes that help you reuse your scraps and produce zero waste. So for example, if you're somebody who juices, you can take that juice pulp and actually use it to make morning muffins. Not only do the muffins taste really moist and delicious, but they also have little bits of kale and carrot and apple that help them become even more nutritious. So consider that. The other thing to know is that there's groups out there like Food Rescue that you can contact if you're having an event, even a wedding, and they will coordinate with you to actually help pick up all of that uneaten food from your event and repurpose it and deliver it to those in need. And so organizations like Food Rescue really do a big effort in trying to minimize the food that ends up in our landfills. So remember, don't waste food, look for alternatives that are zero waste. A big action you can take is to electrify your vehicle. Next time you're shopping for a new car, really consider buying an electric vehicle. You know, they've become much more stylish these days, much more affordable, even take you longer miles. So it really is worth the investigation to consider buying an electric vehicle next time around. Until then, there's a lot you can do around home to minimize your energy usage, and one of those is to simply play with your thermostat. So in the wintertime, you're gonna wanna set your thermostat to 68 degrees Fahrenheit, and in the summertime, set that thermostat to 78 degrees Fahrenheit. That way you are using a lot less energy. Another thing you can do is to unplug those electronic devices. And a way that makes it really easy is by using a power strip. So plug all of your electronic devices into a power strip when you're using them, and then when you're not using them, all you have to do is turn off the power strip. Turns out that even fully charged phones, for instance, can use up to 2.24 watts of electricity. So the simple action of switching things off can make a big impact. Another thing you can do to lessen your impact on the ocean is to fly less. Compared to other modes of transport, such as train and automobile, flying has a greater climate impact per passenger per mile, even over longer distances. Now, to balance this damage that your flight does to the environment, there's a couple things you can do. First of all, you can choose direct flights. Airplanes use most of their fuel during takeoff. The other thing you can do is for trips that are under 600 miles, it's better to travel either by train, bus, or automobile. And if you are looking to travel somewhere a little bit further away, traveling up to 3,000 miles away is the most fuel efficient way to travel by plane. So next time you're choosing that long vacation, choose wisely. Go ahead and draw a map around that 3,000 mile radius and see where you end up. And finally, get engaged. You see, your voice matters, and you have just as much credibility and influence in your community as any science expert. So feel emboldened, get out there and share your story of how you are helping to create a better, bluer planet. Because remember, at the end of the day, we are all wave makers, and it just takes one to create that ripple of change for a better world. So why not be you? Well, now that you know what to do, my hope is that we swap out our damaging routines that we've come to know from our Western culture for a way of life that adds more depth and meaning to our lives. From space, we resemble a blue marble in the inky vastness of the universe. It's no coincidence that just as our planet is about 70% water, so too is our body, our brain, our heart, and our lungs about 70% water. We follow the water to find life on other universes. We seek the refuge of water to come back to ourselves. Water inspires us, energizes us, and connects us to one another. How inappropriate it is that we call this planet Earth when in fact it's planet Ocean. With this new understanding of how our blue mind works, I ask that you consider releasing your grip on the shoreline and remember that we are all water creatures. Reconnect to your water and fall back in love with the very element that brings you fresh air, food, fun, fitness, and fulfillment. Then do whatever you can to protect the very element that makes you feel so good and that brings you so much life. I wish you water.